Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimale here in Abuja. Let's begin tonight by bringing you up to speed with what is happening in Lagos. Of course, the president, Bola Tinubu, has been celebrating the Eid Fitr celebration in the end of Ramadan in Lagos. But the governor there is talking tough. That is Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and he's coming down hard on the buildings lacking integrity around the Dosomo area of Lagos Island. The governor says he has resolved to demolish buildings that failed integrity test. The state governor spoke when he visited Dosomo Market on the Lagos Island, which was gutted by fire on Tuesday, where about 14 buildings were affected by the fire, which resulted in a loss of goods worth millions of naira. Tonight, our attention is going to be on the power sector. And in these 60 minutes or so, we'll be engaging the Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabu. There's a lot to clarify, things to say in respect of what Nigerians stand to benefit with the policies under the Tinubu government. Those who are agitating about the hike in the tariff, the production and the distribution or generation of power of a government who has promised that power generation and distribution is going to be one of a major agenda on his plate. But the minister, a former deputy governor of the central bank, who is saddled with the burden of fixing the power problems, tonight will be speaking with us. How much of the solution does he have? He'll be telling us tonight on the program. But before we get to talk with the minister, who is standing by for us, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, says part of the reforms that will be considered in the justice sector will be the review of cases that go to the Supreme Court. These were his words ahead of the upcoming National Summit on Justice. He adds that the summit will deliberate on ways to reduce the amount of time for adjudication of cases and the number of cases getting to the Supreme Court as a means of unburdening the apex court.
We intend to look at a situation where many cases will terminate at the Court of Appeal to reduce the burden on our noble justices of the Supreme Court and to promote efficiency.
Niger State Governor Umar Bago has performed the groundbreaking ceremony of a 118-kilometer road construction comprising 3 road projects in Kontagora as part of his plans to open roads that will facilitate efficient movement of agricultural produce. At the ceremony, the governor disclosed that his government has so far embarked on the construction of 1,000 kilometers of road projects across the state, with 400 kilometers being federal roads.
We have commenced over 1,000 kilometers of road across the state. Out of the 1,000, over 400 is a federal road. But there's no place called federal. Everywhere is a state. So what we have decided to do, we cannot let our people suffer in the name of waiting for federal government intervention.
The Benue State government has upscaled its operations on financial regulations and public service rules for the 23 local government areas of the state. This follows the financial autonomy granted the third tier of government by the governor, Hyacinth Alia, with the hope that the National Assembly will finally pass into law the Local Government Autonomy Bill.
We are therefore committed to the growth and development of the system and have outlined the adequate plans to open up the rural areas to enable rural economies to thrive.
Governor of Bayelsa State, Mr. Doye Dewey, has called on Nigerians to support President Bola Tinubu's administration to succeed. He said this during the Eid al-Fitr celebration where he hosted members of the Muslim community in Bayelsa State. Senator Dewey assured the Muslim community of his administration's commitment to promoting peaceful coexistence and religious harmony in the state.
Nigeria is a great country, but we have not been able to make it great. We need to have the will to make Nigeria a great country. And in doing so, we must accept the government of the day.
A former governor of Rivers State, Mr. Peter Odili, has endorsed Governor Siminalayi Fubara as a political leader of the state, praising him for defending the interests of the people. The former governor spoke today at the commissioning of a primary health care center donated by his Pamo Foundation in Ndoni, his hometown in the Ogba Egbema and Ndoni local government area. The statement could be perceived as rare considering the political activities in the state. Mr. Odili commended Fubara's performance in critical sectors within his first year in office, particularly focusing on the well-being of the people.
Your Excellency, for standing up to your oath of office to defend the interests of all Rivers people in accordance with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Shockwaves have been sent across the country following the announcement of the passing of a former governor of Abia State and former Minister of Science and Technology under the Buhari administration, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu. The 72-year-old politician is said to have died earlier today.
Thank you so much, everyone. There you have it. You've been served with your political roundup stories. Tonight, we'll delve into the heart of Nigeria's power sector. In a conversation with the Honorable Minister of Power, tonight we confront the pressing issues at hand, the recent uproar surrounding electricity tariff hikes, the contentious debate over subsidies, and the imperative for transparency in governance. But that's not all. We'll also scrutinize the resilience of Nigeria's national grid amidst recent collapses, exploring the strategies and investment needed to ensure a stable energy future for a nation that is being touted and indeed the giant of Africa that is behaving like a dwarf with the kind of development that we have seen over the years. How much of some of these challenges can we overcome in a country that is full of potential? Tonight, I'm being joined by the Minister of Power, Mr. Akeredolu, who joins us live from Ibadan, the capital of Oyo State. Thank you so much indeed, Honorable Minister, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, Sheon.
Appreciate it. Let me begin with what has become a major reaction from Nigerians, perhaps something that you said about the closing when you had the engagement at the ministerial briefing. There has been a lot of reactions to your statement when you were asking Nigerians to start switching off their freezers. That perhaps had come to Nigerians who feel offended by that statement, telling them to switch off their freezers and their appliances. Do you regret such a statement, Minister, which perhaps comes to many as a statement that came in a bad taste?
Thank you so much, Sheon. Let me start by saying that it was never intended to insult the sensibilities of Nigeria in any way. Sincerely, if you watched the tape, that video very well, I never said that people should switch off their freezer. It was actually an innocent advice with regard to energy consumption management, which we believe will go a long way in reducing people's energy bills. And that advice was actually directed at those that we believe, because of the recent increase in tariff, you start enjoying 20, 22, 24 hours of power supply. What I said was that the fact that the tariff for Band A, which is for 15% of the total electricity consumers, will increase by over 200% does not necessarily translate into 200% increase in their electricity bills if power is properly managed in terms of consumption. The example of the freezer, well, it might not have gone down well with majority of Nigerians. I would say, oh, sorry about that. It was never my intention to insult anybody. It was just out of my passion and my eagerness to ensure that we make a change in this sector, which has suffered a lot of setback for some years, that we said we need to cultivate the culture of energy consumption management. In fact, the example I gave in there was the air conditioners that a lot of people leave it on while they are still not in the room, that we should just manage. Sincerely, it was passed across jokingly. It was quite a comical illustration. I never intended to insult anybody. So to Nigerians who felt offended by this statement, I said sorry. I said sorry, forgive us. This is our country. This administration is determined to make a change in the power sector, which we believe is critical to the optimal performance of other critical sectors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for apologizing because a lot of people felt offended by it, and immediately they took you up on it. That why would you be the one to advise them on what to do, especially because of the anger in the land over the electricity tariff hike. And there are those who will say, let's address the elephant in the room, which is the recent hikes in the electricity tariff, which has sparked nationwide agitation. There are those who believe that this same government increase or remove subsidy on petrol, which caused a lot of ripple effect on our economy. Perhaps that this government is insensitive to the sufferings of Nigerians. Why would the same government, within the same 1 year ban, has come again with what has become another burden, which analysts have said will impact on the economy negatively? Did your ministry think about this deeply and what implication it will be for our economy, an economy that is suffering in the face of a biting inflation increase in inflation?
Thank you very much. I agree with you that Nigerians are hungry and they have become so touchy. I don't blame Nigerians for that because their complaints are quite legitimate. They have suffered energy poverty for so long, so they are actually eager to see a transformation in this sector. So anything that we say that they consider offensive, I think we're sorry about that. We're just trying to make sure that we make an impact in the industry. And let me say that, since I resumed and that we have diagnosed the problem in the power sector, one of the key issues that we found out was the lack of liquidity in the sector and the lack of appropriate pricing for power, which government has been subsidizing for a while. And we look at the subsidy requirements for the year 2024, if we must continue the same subsidy regime, and we found out that it was going to cost the government over 3 trillion naira to sustain the subsidy for the current year. And we said, let's try to be reasonable. Government cannot afford to pay 3 trillion naira in subsidy for power sector alone, when federal government's total annual revenue budget is a 28 trillion naira. 3 trillion is more than 10% of the total budget meant for the entire countries. And there are so many other competing sectors which we believe also need resources. We look at the works ministry is there, housing is there, health is there, education, defense, and all that. That it is just not possible for government to continue to subsidize at the rate of 3 trillion. And we now looked at, how do we achieve two things? To reduce the subsidy. In fact, government is sensitive to the extent that at the time we considered the possibility of not even reviewing the tariff upward at all because of the current hardship that Nigerians are passing through, coming from the harmonization of the exchange rate, which has led to consistent decline in the value of the naira, coming from the removal of the fuel subsidy, and which has led to escalation in prices of commodities and goods. And this is inflation at over 30%. Removing subsidy completely will add to this suffering. And Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu specifically told us that this is not the right time for us to remove subsidy from tariff at all, that it will only add to the hardship of Nigerians. What can we do to have a middle ground as a compromise to ensure that we are able to get subsidy reduced by some amount, at the same time, majority of Nigerians still continue to enjoy the subsidy, which is why we arrived at the fact that 15% of the customers, which is about 1.5 million out of about 12 million customers, should be able to afford the new electricity tariff, while majority of electricity consumers, which is about 85%, that is over 10 million, will continue to enjoy the subsidy, which is why we restricted the subsidy to just 15% of customers who are classified as Band A customers. And why did we do that? The problem in the power sector, you cannot upgrade or enhance the infrastructure 100% for all the customers. And we look at those customers that have relatively better infrastructure that can enable the distribution companies to give them some reasonable number of supply in a day. And we said, okay, this is Band A customers. And there are about 1,500 feeders that fall under these Band A customers. And we looked at them, we said, no, let us even reduce the number of feeders. And we downgraded them to just 500 feeders so that those that will be affected will not be more than 50% of customers. And those that we have promised 20 hours supply of power in a day, the infrastructure should be adequate and good enough to support this service covenant. That is why we restricted to 15% of customers. And I must tell you that it is actually the consideration of the current hardship and the sensitivity of government to people's sufferings that made Mr. President to veto that we should not go beyond this 15% of customers, which I believe is more like a mutual sacrifice from the people and from the government.
All right, Minister.
And we also believe that logically, it will not, it can be easily managed. If the power supply from the discos can replace the hours of power supply that they generate from the use of petrol and diesel generators, which we believe the cost of that is even more than what we have increased the tariff.
All right, Minister, let me jump in quickly. So let me ask you, have you thought about the legality of this move in the tariff hike in view of the provisions of the Electricity Act of 2023? There are those who believe that the action of the government in the hike of the tariff is illegal.
Oh, thank you. We considered that, and I can tell you that review of tariff is actually legal once it is within the exclusive responsibilities of the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. The Act actually provides for review twice in a year. Every 6 months, we expected to do a minor review of the tariff based on the economic indices, because there are variable factors in considering what make up a tariff. And every 2 years, we should be able to do a major tariff review. Once the discos are carried along, once the customers are carried along, I believe it's still within the the legal system allows us to do.
Minister, which is the issue here, right? Section 116 of that Electricity Act provides an industry or sector-wide consultation. I like the producers to put on that section. I don't know how much of the compliance of your ministry and NERC in substantially in considering Section 116 of the Electricity Act of 2023 in consultation and adhering to the provision of this section. Was it adhered to where the stakeholders, where the timeline provided by this section?
Wide consultations before we arrived at increasing the tariff. When you talk about power sector stakeholders, there's so many stakeholders. You have the power sector operators, the generating companies, you have the transmission company, you have the discos, and you have the customers, and even you have the workers. If you have been listening, following my activities, in the last 6 months since I resumed as the minister, this is one thing that I've been saying consistently, that there will be need to review the subsidy regime, to look at how we can arrive at a middle ground whereby the customers be able to sacrifice some amount, while government continue the subsidy for the majority of the electricity consumers. So there was consultation before we finally announced the review. And consultation is also continuous. Let me tell you, after the review was announced, we still continue to engage stakeholders in the power sector to make them see reasons why we must do this if we actually want to sustain the industry and want the operators to continue to be in operation. While I was talking about the debt overhang in the sector, I told you that even the past subsidies that government have pledged, they have not been met, they have not been funded by cash, which is why we have seen the growth in the debt that we owed to generating companies and the gas companies. I mean, 1.3 trillion to the generating companies, the 1.3 billion legacy debt to the gas supply companies. These are issues that cannot be resolved except liquidity injection comes into the sector.
All right.
And one of such liquidity injection is to ensure that customers are able to pay more for stable supply of power. The review is not for those that are actually having epileptic supply for now, due to one reason or the other. Not until we improve their own infrastructure and we're able to migrate them to band A. I believe, and I'm saying it to you, that we will not touch the tariff.
All right, Minister, let's take a quick break. But I would like to get more clarity on this consultation that you have talked about. Because based on the provision of Section 116, it talks about a long list of activities that the government or NERC or the stakeholders or the authorities and the policymakers must take cognizance of. So one will be wondering, when was this consideration made? When the licensees, the customer, the eligible customers, the Consumer Association of Eligible Customers has provided in this section, when were they consulted? When were these meetings? When did they agree on the shift and in the hike in the tariff? They want to know whether this government actually just made this unilaterally and putting more suffering on those these customers that are being affected. We'll get to that clarity when we return from this break, Minister. Stay with us, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get back to the conversation with the Honorable Minister for Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabo, who has been speaking with us from Ibadan. Thank you so much indeed for your time. So I was making reference to the Section 116 of the Electricity Act of 2023. And if you look at the subsection 3, subsection 4, there are consideration before the tariff adjustment can be implemented. So the question will be, at what point did the authorities or the relevant agencies of government meet with the stakeholders? At where and how did they agree to this tariff hike? Because the law stipulates that that agreement must be reached before a variation in the methodology of tariff increase can be adjusted.
Thank you, Sheon. Let me start by saying that there is no way we're going to announce a tariff hike without having discussed with some of these stakeholders that you mentioned. Since September 2023, I've been moving around, I've been consulting with the major stakeholders in the sector, like I mentioned, the generating companies, the transmission company, the discos, some customers, and a lot of the power sector operators. Of course, we did not label the consultation to be consultation on tariff review. What we were discussing is, okay, what is the way forward to resolve the liquidity crisis that we have in this sector? And of course, everybody agreed that there's no appropriate pricing of electricity. And what they said is there can only be appropriate pricing when there is stability in supply. There's no way we're going to increase tariff for darkness. It must be for stable electricity. And we now say, okay, if at all we're going to increase or review the tariff upward, it has to be for that band of customers that can enjoy some reasonable number of supply in a day, which we put at 20 hours. I can tell you that between December 14 and December 16, we also all gathered at the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja, where we had a 3-day retreat where this was discussed extensively. And the major issue that we discussed was possibility of reviewing the tariff in the industry for that band of customers that have the infrastructure to be served minimum of 20 hours of electricity in a day. That will actually justify an increase. So that subsidy will still be retained and sustained on 85% of customers. That's more like what we discussed, and that was more like a subtle agreement. Of course, we will not come up with, okay, this is the percentage increase it goes to. It must be in terms of cost recovery for production of generation of electricity or transmission of electricity and for its distribution. So what we looked at was not a price that is actually out of this world or that's coming from the blues. We look at what does it cost to produce this electricity, to transmit and to distribute. That's
Minister,
the kind of consultation that we did. And I also told you that it is not stopping. We still continue with the consultation.
Yeah, Minister, there are those who argue legally that there is no compliance, legal compliance with the law in the decision of the federal government to hike the electricity tariff. But are you worried that there might be a day in court where some Nigerians will challenge this decision of the federal government in doing what is just done?
I'm not worried, Chiu, I must tell you, because it is the people's right to seek redress if they believe government has done the wrong thing. And it's now the government's responsibility to provide evidence of the fact that they have done what is right and it will be settled amicably. I told you that the Act provides for minor review of tariff every 6 months and a major review of tariff every 2 years. The last review that we had was early 2022, which is almost 2 years ago. So increasing the tariff at this time for a particular band of customers, I don't think is illegal.
But Minister, how do you also explain that you are taking, there are those who will argue anyways, that even the band A customers are not getting the 20 hours of electricity that you are talking about? It's been erratic. It's not been stable. And then those who will say, yes, you are giving power to those who can pay premium, and you are taking it away from the poor Nigerians. Is that fair?
Oh, let me also clarify the fact that at the last press briefing that we had, and all the sensitization that NAC, that's the Investing Regulatory Commission, have been making, we made it clear that for those that will not enjoy up to 20 hours, it has to be highlighted. And there must be a way that they will be downgraded to band B. And whatever compensation that is necessary will be paid to them. Of course, we envisage that we may not be able to achieve this 100%. At least if it is 80, 85%, we are moving somewhere. Because transformation in this sector is a journey. And we must start it from somewhere. And nobody has told us that it's going to be easy. We're going to face a lot of resistance. All we are saying is that we're going to discuss and we're going to have some common ground to agree. The good thing about it, this is that, number one, we have received a lot of positive feedbacks. Some communities that have been enjoying these 22, 23 hours of supply. While we still have some pockets of complaints around there, we're going to look at both cases. But those that we need to compensate for, make a refund, we're going to do that. But we must start from somewhere for us to get to where we are going. It's a journey, and everybody must be ready to make a sacrifice. Otherwise, this sector will continue to stagnate. And it is not good for this government because we have promised that we are going to transform this sector. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has identified the power sector as a critical sector that he wants to use to drive other critical sectors under his renewed hope agenda. And he's giving us that political backing. He's giving us financial backing to ensure that we actually succeed in this journey. We must start from somewhere. We cannot continue to stagnate. I'm telling you that what we are going to have tomorrow is going to be better than what we have today. The resistance will come and we'll address it in a civil manner that will not offend each other. But I can tell you that a number of communities have been enjoying over 20 hours supply of flights.
So, Minister, let's talk about transparency. Because there is, I know...
Sorry, Sheung.
Yeah.
Sheung, let me address the other side, the other part of the question, where you said, won't the other bands be shortchanged? They will not be, because as we are doing this, we are trying to stimulate demand. power demand. And we're also working on generation to ensure that we ramp up generation to a minimum of 6,000 megawatts within the next 3 to 6 months. This will ensure that the power available will be able to go around both the premium band and those that
but Minister, that appears to be a very wrong. That appears to be a very wrong route, because generation hasn't been a major problem for us. We've not been able to transmit properly and distribute properly. There is a major gap. There are those who believe that wrapping up even what we have in generation, we are not able to consume. What about the fix in the gap in the distribution and in the transmission of the one that we have? We are not able to use up what we are generating at the moment, Minister.
No, let me tell you, generation has not been our problem, but there's a feedstock for generation. As it is today, 25% of our generation capacity is from hydroelectric power, from the dams, while 75% is from the gas-powered power plants. I'm telling you that the gas that's supposed to be the raw materials for this have not been coming in adequate portion that will actually enable us to ramp up generation. This is what we are working on. As it is today, we are generating circa 4,500 megawatts of power, and we believe we need more than that. In February, when we had issues with the epileptic supply of power, which was prevalent nationwide, it was because generation dropped to 3,000 megawatts because of inadequate supply of gas. And we have been working day and night to ensure that we have adequate gas supply to power these gas plants. And the thing has been ramped up to about 4,500. We are not stopping at that. We are discussing with the generation company stakeholders to ensure that within the next 3 to 6 months, they're able to get enough gas, not only in quantity, but in quality of gas, to ensure that they will produce 6,000 megawatts. And I can also tell you that the transmission capacity as we have today can wheel over 6,000 megawatts of power on the national grid. In March 2021, that's almost 3 years ago, we wheeled 5,800 megawatts of power. If we could do that 3 years ago, with the number of enhancements that we have done to the transmission grid, I'm confident that if we have 6,000 today, we have enough capacity in the national grid infrastructure to transmit 6,000. Then this will now go to the disco infrastructures for them to be able to distribute 6,000 megawatts of power, which I believe will happen.
Yeah, so the question I'm asking, Minister, is if the government can be transparent to Nigerians. When you say you will give more people, some people more power if they can pay for it. But when you say that you're generating more power, a lot of people know that transmission and distribution is a big gap from what we generate. What are we transmitting today? What are we able to transmit and distribute to Nigerians? What is the quantity of power that we are able to transmit as of today, Minister?
Thank you. We are generating around 4,500, 4,600 megawatts of power today, and we're transmitting the entire 4,500 megawatts. But of course, because of the situation of those infrastructures in terms of the dilapidated power lines, weak power towers, and the transformers, there will be what we call the ATC and C losses. That's the technical losses and the commercial losses. Of course, when privatization started, these losses was actually in the order of 50 to 60%. As it is today, it's been reduced to 35 to 40%, even though it varies from disco territory to another disco territory. So as I can tell you, whatever we are producing today, the transmission infrastructure is transmitted to the distribution companies.
Yeah,
then
Minister,
when we get to distribution infrastructure,
Minister,
that is where we have some issues. Yes.
Yeah, there is a major problem in the options that we have, the gas and the hydropower. We know the challenges and the problems. What happens to the alternative energy mixes that are available? And first, before I get to the alternative energy mixes, first and foremost, is the fact that we know that a single grid system has not served Nigeria well over the past years. What is this government doing to decentralize electricity transmission?
Thank you very much. I thought you were going to ask me the steps that we have been taking and the things that we've been doing to resolve the issues, because we should not be spending too much time on what the issues are in the power sector. We are at the stage where we must face execution and implementation of what this government has in stock. In terms of, because what we see today or what we experience in Nigeria today is actually a reflection of what has accumulated over time. There are lots and lots of issues in the power sector. And one of the issues, what you just mentioned, which is the poor investment in alternative power sources, especially when we have good source of solar energy and we have good source of wind energy. We also have some small dams, which are actually renewable energy too. We have not invested so much in that in the past. And this is one of the things that the present day administration is working on to ensure that we have alternative sources of energy, especially solar source. We have an investment proposal by, I will not mention it, by a particular foreign investor to actually install 1 gigawatt of solar energy across the 50 states in the northern states. 1 gigawatt means 1,000 megawatts. There's another interested investor, which we have been discussing with, and our discussion has reached advanced stage, that are ready to establish a 2 gigawatt solar energy of 100 gigawatts each in 20 states. These are things that we are working on, and we believe they will translate into another source of power. Beyond that, we have 26 small dams that can be used for hydroelectric power generation across the length and breadth of Nigeria. These are what we believe we need to activate, and the subnational government must start showing interest in playing in the energy sector, because the main solution to us today is for us to have a decentralized power system where we have distributed power source. But by every state will have, at the minimum, 50 megawatts of power generated within the state. And this one that we not even need to pass through the transmission grid. They can be treated as embedded power generation within the distribution network available in all those states. And now we have seen a number of states that are coming up now. And this will go a long way in transforming the face of power sector in Nigeria.
Minister, yeah, I'm hearing that there are talks, and you're talking about foreign investors, but there is a global industry leader in renewables, globally acceptable, and which, a Nigerian that has served about 18 countries, both in Africa, in Europe, and in Asia, that has proven in this country that the problems, there are solutions to Nigeria power problems, and we have seen it practically happening in Nigeria. Why haven't your ministry reached out to such a person, rub minds, on the deployment of each type of solutions in renewables? States like Niger State, we've seen practically have approached, and they are doing something in that regard and already initiated steps in this direction. Why doesn't the federal government reach out as well to a Nigerian who is a global leader in renewables? We are now hearing about foreign investors. These are Nigerians who are providing solutions to the UK, to South Africa, to Turkey.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said earlier, that solution to the Nigeria power sector should be a collective effort. And we have been talking and discussing at advanced stages with so many interested investors in alternative energy solution. This Nigeria that you're talking about, I don't know the name, but I believe that we have also engaged a number of Nigerians that are experts in this realm. So I must tell you that we may have started discussion with this person. If you give me the name, I will let you know specifically whether we have talked to him or not. I want to implore anybody that believes that they can add value in terms of transformation of the power sector. They can contact us, they can reach out to us, and we are receptive to very, very new ideas.
I'm just worried, Minister, that instead of us seeking the white man's solution, when we have Nigerians who are experts and are giving those solutions to other countries of the world.
We are talking to a lot of Nigerians, we are talking to a lot of Nigerians. I can't start listing their names. There are so many people that are experts in this area, and we are talking to them. A lot of the discussions have reached advanced stages. But one thing about power sector is projects cannot be finished in 3 months or finished in 6 months. But we are starting very well with all these people that are experts, they are renowned in alternative energy sources. I believe the person you are talking about must have reached out to us and must have been talking to him. I can tell you that. All right. You don't want to leave anybody out of this transformation journey.
Let me ask you, how much at the moment is Nigeria paying on the Nigerian government and the Nigeria paying on electricity subsidy?
Yes, I mentioned it in my press briefing as it is today. When you look at the total production, transmission, and distribution costs, the Nigerian government is bearing 67% of that cost before the increase in tariff for the band A customers. That's the total cost. Then when you look at generation costs, the Nigerian government is paying 90% of generation cost if you remove distribution cost out of it. So, but in terms of total subsidy, it's about 67% of subsidy of the tariff that the Indian government is paying.
In narrow terms, how much is Nigeria paying yearly?
Well, last year it was about 720 billion, which was not fully funded. We have about 305 billion carried into this year. And if we retain tariff at the current level, the Indian government will be needing about 2.9 trillion naira to subsidize electricity. But with the increase in the tariff for the bandit customers, we're going to have a reduction of about 1.1 trillion. So we're looking at about 1.7, 1.8 for the year.
Can the government be very transparent with Nigerians today? If in 2022, the government says that there won't be any kind of subsidy on electricity, but when the government begin to pay this subsidy and Nigerians are aware, how did these come by? Where are these monies coming from? The question is the government surreptitiously paying this subsidy? Is a transparency a problem in this mix?
I can confirm to you that the Indian government has been as transparent as possible since this administration took over. If the government was not paying so much subsidy in 2022, and the price that we have today was the same in 2022, of course, there are a lot of components of electricity cost that is driven by FX. We know what dollar was exchanging for in 2022. We know what it is today. What was the price of gas at that time? What is the current price of gas with the current exchange rate? We know what inflation does to cost of running in terms of operation and maintenance of power plants, of transmission infrastructure, and of distribution infrastructure. We know what power transformers were going for in terms of cost 2 years ago. What are they going for now? The same thing with distribution transformers. When you talk about cables cost does not remain the same as it was 2 years ago. Of course, there will be need for an upward adjustment of the tariff. But if we have retained the tariff at the same level for the past 2 years, it logically means that someone has been bearing the burden of all these increases in the building blocks to computation of tariff. I hope that satisfies you.
Yeah, Minister, so Nigeria is paying this subsidy, and those who believe that actually what we are paying for is the inefficiencies of some of these companies that have been privatized and the issues of whether or not they were able to run it. The government had come out at some point to say, the government of the past government has said they sold some of these companies to their friends, and some of these friends were not able to run these properly. For example, Honorable Minister, there is an alleged fraud of $500 million at the TCN, and they are unable to even pay salaries. The question will be, how could they successfully keep the national grid functioning in that kind of quagmire?
Well, Sean, let me start by addressing the issue of privatization. I was not there in 2013 when this privatization took place, but I can tell you that we all know that privatized companies always run better than the government-managed company. The objectives that they had in mind then was quite laudable for the reason of privatization. But I believe the execution is what actually caused the problem. The first issue in terms of this prosecution of the privatization was the fact that those that should take up these power plants and the distribution companies must have the technical expertise in utility management before they can decide to actually invest in the power sector. If the investors don't really have the expertise, they must have technical partnership agreements with a world-acclaimed utility management company. And another requirement is in terms of the financial capacity of the investors. We just found out that the majority of the acquisitions were done through bank loans. There was very little equity capital that they brought in. It was all debt capital. So they were under so much pressure to pay back on these loans. Then the poor investment infrastructure. At the time of privatization, there was an agreement that they were going to bring in money to make sure they improve investment, they improve infrastructure to reduce the ATC losses. They have not done this in the last 10 years. And we are also looking at the enabling legislation at that time. The legislation, which is the Power Sector Reform Act then, did not really permit the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission to discipline or met out sanctions that are punitive on the erring or an indicted disco. But Legislative Act of 2023 has corrected this. We also believe that there was poor incentives for the discos in terms of commercial pricing or funding of government subsidy. So instead of reversal of privatization, we just believe that we need to make the best of a bad situation. And all this is what this government is trying to correct and resolve going forward. But they are not things that will happen overnight. They are not issues that will resolve in 3 or 6 months. It requires a bit of time. And I also...
Sorry, Minister, how can this government allow those inefficiencies to continue? Those who do not have capacity to run this, and that's one of the major problems of why Nigeria is in darkness. Those who do not have the capacity, they don't have the monetary capacity to run this company. They have hoodwinked the government and the Nigerian people, and they have been allowed to run this and make Nigerians suffer. Will this government not bring them to book and be transparent to the Nigerian people whose their monies and their suffering and their sweat is being used to pay for this inefficiency of darkness that have been provided for them?
I share your view, Sheung. I share your view completely, 100%. But they will not all be sacked overnight. There must be a procedure to this. This government has the plan to correct all these deficiencies. It is not acceptable for companies without the technical expertise in power sector operation to continue to hold ownership in that sector. And government is actually looking at this and they're finding ways to correct these inefficiencies. These are what we have in plans to do. But I can tell you, Shane, we just spent 7-8 months in this sector. We have fully diagnosed the issues. We know the issues in the sector, properly documented, and even the solutions. We have documented the solutions after wide consultations of all the power sector stakeholders, including all the experts that we know. But now we are at the stage of execution. Sheung, Nigerians have to be patient with us. They need to exercise some patience and allow us to carry out all these our laudable plans.
All right.
Because we need stability in the sector.
Minister,
I can tell you we're very serious at turning around this sector.
Minister,
and all these things that you said will be looked into. I also agree with you in terms of the inefficiencies, in terms of the cost of these operators. We will look at it. And by the time we look at it, and all those inefficiencies are eliminated, of course, it will have positive impact on the tariff, and tariff will come down. The tariff is flexible, and I can tell you that even if Naira gains more, and the exchange rate can even come down below 1,000, it must possibly affect the tariff. And the tariff, even for the band A, will come down below the 225 that we are currently charging them. There are variable factors that go into the computation of the tariffs, and we are not closing our eyes to this. We are transparent, we are publishing it, and we are talking to Nigerians, we are talking to the consumers, and all the power sector stakeholders. This administration is very serious, and we are committed to transforming the sector. The problem we are having is an accumulated problem of over 50 years. It will not disappear in 1 year, but we'll be making consistent and gradual progress.
Minister, if I may jump in quickly, just for a moment. Yeah, just for a moment. If I may jump in, just in about 60 seconds. You said that there's a lot that you are doing, but Nigerians want to know. Because there are those who will be asking, what has Akeredolu done since assuming office as a minister of power? What are the indices? What are the facts to your performance? What have you done? What are the timelines? In 60 seconds, can you tell us how much of power can we increase? You say about 5,000 megawatt is what we are doing right now. Incrementally, what are your expectations? What are the timelines? Within the next 6 months or so, or 1 year, what are you going to give to Nigerians? What should Nigerians be expecting? Can you give us that in 60 seconds? What are the expectations that Nigerians should be looking forward to?
Thank you very much. Of course, when you take over an office, you will not jump out the following day and start making promises that are baseless. What we did in our first 3 to 4 months was to diagnose the system to find out what the problems are. And we consulted experts, we consulted stakeholders, and we agreed at a retreat that these are the list of solutions to these problems. And we want to implement, execute these solutions faithfully and consistently. And let me give this commitment to Nigerians that we are currently at a little over 4,000 megawatts today. We are working tirelessly, day and night, to ensure that in the next 6 months, we're able to ramp up generation to 6,000 megawatts for the first time in the history of this country. We have an installed capacity of about 13,000 megawatts across the hydropower plants and the thermal plants. But I'm telling you, because of certain reasons, we have not been able to produce more than a little over 4,000. But we are going to change the narrative in this administration. In the next 6 months, Nigerians should expect nothing less than 6,000 megawatts of power generated. And this 6,000 will be successfully transmitted to Nigerians, and it will be distributed to Nigerians. We are working on distribution infrastructures. We may not be able to attack it 100%, but we will attack it gradually. We are attacking the first 15%. Once we stabilize this, we'll move to the next band, and we'll ensure that we migrate them and they're having consistent power supply. That is the only way out of this industry, out of this sector, for us to move ahead.
Minister,
we're also working on transmission. I spoke about the Siemens project, which is also going to do a lot to change the face of transmission and distribution in the power sector.
When will the Siemens project kick off?
That they have used.
When will the Siemens project kick off?
Sustain it. It has kicked off already, Shehu. We are almost concluding the pilot phase of this project, which is the importation of 10 power transformers and 10 mobile substations, which have already arrived. We have installed and have commissioned 5 of these power transformers at various locations across the country. Within the next 1 to 2 months, they're going to install and commission the rest. The power mobile substations, we have installed 3. And by God's grace, in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to commission the 3, and we have 7 already left, which will be working. We are actually migrating to the phase 1 of this project, which I believe is bigger, and Nigeria will start having a positive impact on the sector.
All right, Minister, unfortunately, you were not able to talk about the allegation of corruption in the TCN, which is a major issue. But I'm totally out of time, I'm being told.
Once the evidence gets to my table, we will start investigation. But all these are grapevine information that have not been backed up with evidence. People know me that once the evidence of such gets to my table, I will leave no stone unturned to ensure that we get to the bottom of that fraud allegation. If it is actually true, you can see what happened in the Rural Electrification Agency. We got information about a 1.2 billion naira fraud, and the management did not stay till the following day. We took the step. This government does not have tolerance for such. We are focused on more serious issues that people that will sabotage this administration. We will not allow it.
All right. Thank you so much. Maybe next time that I get to talk to you, we will talk about the Mambila Power Project and some of the other issues
I'm available anytime, Shehu. I'm available for you anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister.
Nigerians deserve to know the truth.
Thank you so much indeed. I appreciate your time tonight, and we are hoping and praying for our country. If this singular problem is resolved, we would move forward as a country and becoming the giants that we are really in the face of all these problems that's making us look like a dwarf. Nigeria is a great nation, and I wish you the very best, Mr. Adebayo Adelabu, the Honorable Minister for Power. Thank you so much indeed for tonight.
Thank you very much, Jim.
I appreciate it. That's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. God bless Nigeria.